spirit name, or my traditional name, is Nigan. And I didn't get that at birth, as I should have. When I was born 77 years ago, we were forbidden to be Indian, forbidden to pray, sing, dance, carry on the traditional ceremonies of our grandfathers and grandmothers, and we were forbidden to have Indian names. That was a position of the United States government. It was backed by the churches throughout America. The churches played a big role in that. And white European education totally neglects the true history of America and who was here when they came across the water in those boats. And none of that history is ever told. None of it. You won't see it in any curriculum. You won't see it in any history books. Some of it's starting to creep into the educational systems of America, but there's no books that depict the truth and the contributions that Indian people made to modern day society. My name is Nigan. I received that name when I came home from Wounded Knee in 1973, where we went to defend the women and children who were living under a tyranny there on that reservation in Pine Ridge in South Dakota, where there was a goon squad. That was the name of it, Guardians of the Ocala Nation, which were funded by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, armed with AR-15s and automatic weapons, metal-piercing bullets. And their mission was to get rid of the American Indian movement. My spirit name is Nigan. I'm thunder before the storm. And I like that a lot better than Clyde. Has more meaning to it. You know, our names today don't come out of Bibles in Hollywood journals. You know, we are giving our children back their identity and their language. But when the American Indian movement formed in July of 1968, we felt that absolutely nothing was being done to upgrade the conditions of Indian people here in America. Civil rights and human rights was strictly a black and white issue. And Indian people were left out of the picture completely. But we also knew when we formed in July of 1978 that 75% of all the energy resources left in America is still on Indian land. And we made a statement when we formed that we would never give up another inch or another ounce. And because of that, the then President of the United States, Richard Nixon, and others launched a program called counterintelligence. You guys know a little bit about J. Edgar Hoover. You know what I'm talking about. He launched a program to infiltrate all known movements, to break down any kind of resistance, revolutionary movements in America, to infiltrate, disrupt, discredit, and destroy. And just 3 years after the formation of the American Indian movement, we were listed number 3 on the top 10 hit list of an organization that had to be totally eliminated. And we don't have weapons of mass destruction. We were living in dire poverty. In 1968 of you, just you and every one of you in this room, were living below $4,500 a year. You were living in dire poverty. And our income, our per capita income, and that year was $1,500 a year for Indian people. And that was because of the breakdown of the federal government's these treaties with Indian people. They created out of the Interior Department a program called the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It was the largest and oldest bureaucracy in America, 2,500 employees in Washington, D.C. So every dollar that was appropriated by Congress to service Indian people, health, education, the welfare of Indian people, 80 cents of that dollar was used in administrative costs. And only 20 20 cents out of every dollar trickled down to the Indian people. So we were living in dire poverty. Absolutely nothing was being taught in the public and parochial school systems about Indian people. The only information they had was a hanging site down in Mankato where it said here hung 38 Sioux in 1862. No information about it, who was the President of the United States, who was Sibley, who was Ramsey. You know, Indian people referred to Sibley as Long Knife because he started the scalping policy here. We knew absolutely nothing about scalping. It came from Long Knife Sibley here in Minnesota, and it started all the way up in the 1500s, up in the northeastern, west-eastern coast of America and Newfoundland, by a guy named Governor Kelp. When they started their western expansion, after they sat down and ate Thanksgiving with Indian people, and thanked the Indian people for helping them, showing how to plant their gardens, how to build their homes in the cold winters that were to come. They were very thankful to the Indian people, and they all got together and they had a big dinner. And the Massasoit, the Indian people, had welcomed them. They give honor to the chief. They call him King Philip. That's the name they bestowed upon him, English people. And just one year after that first Thanksgiving, the second Thanksgiving near Plymouth Rock, when they arrived there, they found Chief King Philip head on a pole outside of Plymouth Hall, where they had their Thanksgiving. And that's when they started their western expansion. The Indian people, of course, resisted. And there are 60 tribes that have been totally erased from the face of the earth. Where do we read about that? How do we hear about that? Who teaches us that? Where do we find it in the curricula? Most people that come up through the educational system as it stands today are totally scholastically retarded when it comes to Indian people, when it comes to how the West was really won, what type of government came here, what happened to the Indian people. And when they started that process, when they collected their bounties, they had to prove that they killed an Indian. And they said they were bringing them in by the wagon loads. And some of the church women didn't have any respect back then either. They didn't have a vote, they didn't have nothing. You know, they didn't get that till the late 60s and 70s, and Indian women started being recognized. They're still not fully recognized today, but they spoke out. They said that was gruesome what they were doing to Indian people. You got so much for a male, so much for a female, and then even a child. And so when they said they didn't want that to happen, and it became too cumbersome to bury all the bodies of Indian people, the governor issued a proclamation under pressure from women, issued a proclamation to prove that you killed an Indian. That's all you have to do is bring in their skull. They said they were bringing them in by the bushel baskets, gunny sacks full of skulls to collect their bounty. And after a year or so, the women spoke out again, talked about they had to stop this massacre of the native people here in America. So the good governor issued another proclamation to prove that you kill an Indian. That's all you had to do is bring in a lock of their hair. And when they would cut that scalp up, the blood would run down the face and bodies of the Indian people. That's where the word redskin comes from. Washington Redskins, that's where their name goes all the way back to that. So now they could kill children because that's all they had to do was bring in a lock of hair, a scalp. And there has been 60 tribes that have been totally erased from the face of the earth since that policy started. And since Columbus landed here, when Columbus landed here, the Indian people came out of the forest and out of the woods, and they greeted them, fed them, gave them medicine. They were sick. They give them Indian medicine, you know, to come from Mother Earth, nourish them back to health. And Columbus sent word back to the Queen. He said, I came upon a people that have no use for a Bible. They don't know how to cuss, they don't know how to swear, they don't know how to steal, they don't know how to pillage from one another. He said they are so kind and so generous. If you ask them for their shirt, they'll take it right off their back and give it to you. They're perfect for exploitation. They're perfect for exploitation. So then the expeditions start coming from all over Europe, conquistadors, everyone started coming here to America. And when the Indian people couldn't produce enough gold, they started cutting off their fingers. Then they started cutting off their hands, then their arms, and pretty soon their skulls and their scalps were brought in. And all the gold that went to Europe caused the Renaissance over there. We hear about the Renaissance. We don't know how that was financed. It was financed when they stripped all the gold out of the sacred places throughout all of Mexico, Central, South America, and all over America. All that gold bullion went back to Europe. Where do we read about that? Who teaches that? How do we get access to that? You might go to the Historic Society and check out all the things I said about Sibley and Ramsey. You know, there was over 300, almost 400 people that were sentenced to be hung in Mankato. Over close to 400 of them. And a minister by the name of went to a Episcopal minister, went and seen Abraham Lincoln, who was then the sitting president. And he was a missionary here. His name was Bishop Whipple. He went seeing Abraham Lincoln. He had a list of all those people. Women too were going to be hung. Youth were going to be hung, that they captured and had stockades in New Ulm and Mankato. They sat down and they started going through the list with Abraham Lincoln. He said, I know these people, I know this family, they're members of the Episcopal Church, they're law-abiding people, they believe in the same God that we believe in, and I think they ought to be exonerated. So Abraham Lincoln was going down the list, he was erasing all those names. Got all the way down to 38 people. By the way, none of them spent more than 5 minutes in the courtroom. The tribunals they had in Mankato. Not one person spent more than 5. They marched them through like an assembly line. Oh, I saw that guy, he attacked our house, he touched our woman, you know. That's all he had to do was say that, and they would sentence him to death. Right down here in Mankato and New Ulm, they had him in these stockades. And Bishop Whipple started going through that list and showing Abraham Lincoln the ones that he knew for sure were innocent, weren't guilty of any crimes. Abraham Lincoln started going down the list, exonerating, erasing their name. Got all the way down to 38. The Ramseys and the Sibleys and all the political people were sending teletypes, and messengers were coming from Minnesota. If you don't hang these people, if you don't stop this insurrection, you're going to have to fight Indian people all the way across America. And Abraham Lincoln bent, good old honest Abe, freer of the slaves, and all these things that we hear about. He's not a hero of mine. He relented, and those 38 people that were left, he exonerated. All but 38. Everybody was free except the 38. He said they have to pay for what the Little Crow Uprising, the War of 1862. And they were going to hang him on October, but they didn't have enough rope after the trials in it. The only thing that saved those people, if they had enough rope, they'd have hung them all 400. They had to requisition the rope from Fort Leonard Wood in Kansas. They sent wagons down to get supplies to hang all those people. And that's the only thing that saved them. You know, when they went to get the rope and that to hang them all, they wanted to have a mass hanging. When they went to get the rope, they started building scaffolds and all that down. But the rope never arrived. And Bishop Whipple was successful in going and pleading their case. Finally, the rope arrived. It was getting Christmas time. Peace on earth is goodwill toward men. That's what it said right above the stockade where they marched in and people out. to the nooses, the scaffold. Peace on earth, goodwill. Oh, we can't hang them now, it's Christmas. So they wait one day after Christmas, they marched them up on the scaffold. You see pictures depicting that today. They've just made those pictures available here in the last few years for everybody to see. They marched them on, put them on that scaffold, a square like this in this room. They couldn't understand it. They tried to put, it was a nice, beautiful, sunny day. They had over 1,200 people with drums, band to play, and people come from all over the world to witness the hanging. Doctors came, or the Mayo brothers were there. They cast lots for the bodies when they finally brought them down, and Charles Mayo and others took them down to Rochester. When the American movement formed in July of 1968, they were still using some of those skeletal remains for pre-med studies. When the American Indian movement formed in 1968, we were able to free them, bring them back home for proper burial, and start exposing what happened. They tried to put hoods over their heads. And the Indians fought. They didn't want the hoods on their heads. It was a beautiful day. The sun was coming up. The Creator had sent His Son to awaken everything in His path as He does every day. Give life to all living things on earth. The Indian people didn't want them to put those hoods on them, but they got them on. And then the band started playing. The drums started. They get the roll call. They're going to drop them out. And then people start spinning around like that, and they're able to get a hold of one another's hands like that in a circle. And everybody got real quiet. What's wrong here? Why are they doing this? And all of a sudden they start singing a song. They sang, oh, what's wrong with these people? We're going to hang them, they're going to death. And now they're singing. And what we found out through our investigations and talking to elders and recorded history, they started singing a song, a death song, to the Creator, the Son. The Creator sent the Son from the east, give all life on earth. And they started talking about all their elders, that they were innocent. And they were singing a song that they were together in unity. They pulled the floor out from under them, hung 38. And that's when they cast lots for the bodies, and these doctors that come from all over the world took those skeletons and used them for pre-med studies all over the world. That's the history, that's the background. When the American Indian movement formed, we found out there was over 600 treaties made with Indian people. They didn't get this land for nothing. We made treaties with them and promised in return for the land that was ceded to what is now the United States of America. We were cut up reservations, areas where we could live and survive. That we could always have the right to hunt and fish. We'd always have the right to teach our children their traditional way of life. We'd have health care. We'd have food. The government promised food and medicine in return for the land, because they knew that they couldn't hunt and fish now the way they used to. Right after, 2 years after the treaty was made, the Dakota people, there was over 200,000 squatters moved onto their land. They weren't satisfied with what the Indian people gave them. They started taking the land, all this rich farmland along the Minnesota River that you drive up when you come from St. Peter and St. James. You see all the corn and soybean. That's all Indian land that was set aside by that treaty. Today it's Cargill and Jolly Green Giant. All of them are there making billions and billions of dollars off the death of Indian people. We studied that. We were prepared when the American Indian movement formed. We knew exactly what was going on. We had documents smuggled out of the Historic Society that depicted all the hangings and all the brutality against Indian people. This Muldoon, this trader down in New Ulm, who was the Indian agent for the federal government, he blocked all the medical supplies. We found out there was warehouses in St. Paul where the medicine was rotting. All the farm equipment, everything that was promised Indian people, they stopped it right in St. Paul. All the money that was to come to them, all that was stopped. And when the Indian people went down to see that trader down in New Ulm and tell them, well, we need medicine, our people are dying, we need food, we need farm equipment, the guy laughed at him. As far as I'm concerned, you can eat grass, he told him. They found that trader and his family. The next morning, they all had a mouthful of grass. That's how the little Crow uprising started. How come they don't talk about that? How come they don't talk about the deceit and the lies and the murder and the scalping that they did to Indian people, the theft of land and resources, stripping us of our language, our culture, the boarding school system where our people were punished. My mother went to school for 9 solid years, never allowed to go home. If she got caught speaking Indian, they'd give her a little toothbrush and a little pail of water, soap, and she had to scrub the floors all day long on her hands and knees, crippled her the rest of her life. Not her, hundreds and thousands. How come we don't talk about that? How come that's not part of history here in Minnesota and across the country? Because the federal government and organized religion and white European education was the only thing that they had to face. And absolutely everything was wiped out. They didn't want their children to know what they did to us. So today when we get up and speak, and I go down to Gustavus Adolphus, where I went a few months ago, speak, people were stunned when I told them the truth and questioned them. They were stunned when I told them that the Bureau of Indian Affairs, white European education, and organized religion are the 3 worst enemies of Indian people. They work day in and day out to strip us of our language, our culture, our tradition, and eventually move us from the land so they can go in and plunder the gold and the uranium, the XL pipeline that's coming to Canada. All that oil is coming off Indian land. It's going through 14 nations, crosses the border, it goes all the way down to Texas, goes right through the burial grounds of the great Sioux Nation. When it gets down to Texas, if it ever gets there, in the Gulf, they separate that tar sands from the oil. Guess where the oil goes? It goes back to Canada. They sell it to China, Russia. That's what's going on. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. And the American Indian movement said, we're not going to give up another inch. We're not going to give an ounce. We're going to bring back our culture. We're going to bring back our beautiful dances, our sun dance, our sacrifice that we made to the Creator, the green corn dance, all these things that they've taken, the sweat lodges and the powwow. We're going to bring them back. The first thing we did, we built a drum. People said, even our own people, oh, you got to forget about the past and think about the future. Even my own mother told me that. She was scared. I was getting shot at, killed. When I was dead one time, an assassination attempt on my life, fallen wounded knee by the FBI. My mother cried, tearful, begged me to forget about this, go back to work. I was a first-class engineer at Northern States Power Company when the movement formed. But I was elected to the chairperson because I talked too much. Told them what I was going to do. They said, how are you going to make this thing happen? We're just small in numbers. Blacks got millions of non-black people supporting them all over the world. How are you going to do this? I'm not an educator. I never went through high school. Barely made it to the 5th grade. But I got up and I said, we'll do it. And I don't know, the Creator must have gave me the word. We'll do it through confrontation politics. What does that mean? I started thinking, what did I say? Why did I say that? I said, that means you go down to the superintendent of schools when children are being racist and discriminated against, not being taught their own language, culture, poked fun of when they're growing their hair. You go down there and you knock on the door. The superintendent of the school board, they don't hear you. You knock a little louder. They don't hear you, knock the damn door down. And you go in and you demand what is right. You demand that you stand on your treaties. When they were handcuffing Indian people to light poles like they did on Franklin Avenue here when they'd have enough room in a paddy wagon to take them downtown, they'd handcuff them in the dead cold of rain or winter and they'd sit there for maybe an hour, 2 hours before the police would come back and get them. We'll start taking pictures of that. We'll start an AIM patrol. We'll get out on the streets, provide pictures and documentation. They're not doing it to any other race of human beings. How can they get away with us? I said, then we'll go down and knock on the mayor's door. You don't hear us, we'll knock a little bit louder. You don't hear us, we'll kick the goddamn door open and we'll go in. That's what I'm talking about. Confrontation, politics. We're small in numbers, so we have to be heard. But half the people ran out the door and knocking one another down. They thought I was nuts, thought I was crazy. And just within days, we were occupying the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We went to the Minnesota Council of Churches, had a division of Indian work, not a single Indian working there. Appropriated millions and millions of dollars to upgrade the conditions of Indian people, and that's all we saw is the church steeples getting higher and turning into glass today. And Indian people are laying in cardboard boxes in a dead cold winter, homeless, no place to go. I said, that's what I call it. I'm not talking about Christianity here. People believe in Jesus Christ. If they walk in his footsteps, if they feed the poor and they house people and give them medical attention as Jesus Christ is, they're a friend of mine. But those that are out there just to rip us off and exploit our poverty, that's who we'll deal with. And we did that. Today the Division of Indian Work is staffed by Indian people. They receive millions of dollars. They're in charge of homes, they're building homes, they're dealing with women that are being abused, they're dealing with alcohol, all the ills that are in our community. Today we have over 70 different programs here in the city of Minneapolis serving our people. Not one of them existed until the American Indian Movement formed. We have a legal rights center today, been in operation for 45 years. If you had enough time, it was a nice weekday, I would take you down and take you a tour in this community. We've represented over 200,000 clients since 1945. I've been there for the last 45 years, since 1968. We have a clinic, you saw it right here, Native American Community Clinic. We have a dental office with 6 chairs right next to it. We serve over 45,000 people a year right here in the city, man, deal with diabetes and mental health and all these sicknesses that are brought through the diets that they formed against us. We have our own housing complex on 24th and Cedar. Go by there. Wrought iron fences around all the buildings, cedar bushes going next to it. As Indian preference. I built that, I helped build that, put that together. We have a job training program down here in Cedar Avenue in Franklin. 5 blocks down, look up on the hill. It says American Indian OIC. We've trained over 40,000 people there, and up in Bemidji we have another office. We have to keep records of everything. We keep records of all the women we're the main vendor for the welfare to work, taking young women and training them so they can 3rd generation welfare, because they can't get employment, they don't have the proper skill. And we have trained them, and we have taken over 30,000 of them right off in welfare roll and put them on payrolls. Nancy Pelosi came through here about 3-4 years ago, and she was giving up the gavel in Washington, D.C., minority House Whip. And she came here and she said, this is the most promising, the greatest job training program in the world today, in the United States and perhaps the world. She said, what do you need? I need $5 million. Mm-hmm. Oh, geez, I don't know if we can do that. You know what the situation is, Washington. She talked about the Republicans and the economy's down, but I'll see what I can do. 2 months later, we get a check for $5 million. So we launch a health program, teach people in health care, work in hospital, become technicians and mental health providers and all that. And now we've found out through all of our statistical work, taking down the numbers, that we've taken over 30,000 people right off in welfare rolls and put them on payroll. How come we don't hear about that? Huh? How come the media doesn't cover that? How come people don't come and visit these programs and see what we've really done? We started schools, Heart of the Earth, the Red Schoolhouse. with a Indian-based curricula, parental control. You couldn't be on our school board unless you had a child going to school. Went through all the discrimination. And we teach our children, we don't teach them to hate whitey, we teach them to feel good about being Indian, not to be ashamed of who you are. We teach them the Ojibwe language, Dakota, Ho-Chunk, all the language that were taken away from them. We brought a drum into our school every Monday morning without failure. For 40-some years, we have a drum. Welcome to, we have circle time, we call it. Everybody kind of chuckled at, laughed at us. We know what these kids are coming out of poverty. They're coming out of maybe a whole weekend of alcoholism, parties, crack cocaine, and all the bad things that are happening. So we have to purify our school. We have to purify their minds. So we burn sage, sing songs. Kids are up, the teachers are up, get up and talk about the problems they're having in school. Kids get up and give their Indian name in the morning when we all say hello to one another. They all have Indian names. There's no longer, Mary, Mother of God, and all these other saints, that names that they bestow upon. They have their own traditional names. We start bringing drums and powwows. I can call a powwow here next weekend. There'll probably be 18, 20 drums show up. Maybe 800 or 900 dancers. I'm working with my niece over here in Hayward, called Under the Earth Powwow. It's a whole nother story of what they did to those people. We established a Thanksgiving powwow up there called Honor the Earth. Biggest powwow in the country. 20-some drums show up there to celebrate for 4 years. Now when you ask people to get up and introduce themselves, every single one of them have an Indian name. My name is Thunder Before the Storm. I belong to the Crane clan. They know their clan system. All we're directly related to all the animal life. We're all relatives, all brothers, sisters. These are the things that happen. But it didn't happen without suffering, without pain, without being shot, without being in prison, without being surrounded by the armed forces like we were at Wounded Knee. When we ended up in Wounded Knee in 1973 to go defend the women and children that were under siege, murders, over 70 murders on that reservation. Right now, today, as I stand here, there hasn't been yet a federal grand jury held to investigate those murders. So the genocide against Indian people is happening while we sat here today. Well, we responded when the women called. Women called and asked us to come there. I didn't hesitate. I had a restraining order on me. I couldn't even go on Pine Ridge because I carried a Catholic priest out of a Sundance there in 1972. I took the Sundance, one of our most sacred spiritual ceremonies. I took it away from the church and the BIA who took control of it. Instead of piercing and sacrificing, like tying themselves to the tree and going back into the womb of Mother Earth to be reborn again, they would take the sacred drums out at noon